Good morning, Salam Malaysia Madani, the Honorable Dato', distinguished guests, esteemed speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Selamat Datang and welcome to the Asia International Security Summit and Expo 2025, Putrajaya International Conference Center, PICC, Malaysia. As your MC, I'm Inspector Michelle Imas Anak Madang from the Royal Malaysia Police, and I'm deeply honored to serve in this capacity for such a groundbreaking event. With the theme Spying on Mobile, Preventing Interception and Cyber-Espionage, Tactics in a Risky Geo-Political Era, this summit stands as a testament to our shared commitment to fostering a safer and more secure global community. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, in our increasingly digital world, our mobile devices have become an essential part of our daily lives, from personal communication to business transactions, but the threats of cyber espionage and mobile interception are more pertinent than ever. As we navigate a landscape rife with geopolitical uncertainties, the need for robust strategies to safeguard our communications have never been more critical. From advanced encryption techniques to emerging technologies designed to protect our communications, you will gain a deeper understanding of the tools at our disposal. As we delve into these pressing topics, I encourage you to engage in dialogue, share your perspectives, and explore potential collaborations. By working together, we can forge stronger defenses against the rising tide of cyber threats. Distinguished and learned guests, ladies and gentlemen, now it is my privilege to introduce a highly esteemed speaker who has dedicated his career in advancing cybersecurity, safeguarding data, and guiding nations on how to navigate the delicate balance between human rights and national security. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Christoph Erdmann to the stage. Let's give him a round of applause.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Christoph Erdmann is Senior Vice President and Managing Director of SecuSmart, a BlackBerry subsidiary, and SecuSmart, a BlackBerry subsidiary as of the end of 2014, has been providing German government agencies, ministries, and other official bodies with an anti-eavesdropping solutions for mobile devices for more than 8 years. SecuSmart is managed by its founder, Dr. Christoph Erdmann himself, and since 2014, he has also been Senior Vice President at BlackBerry and is responsible for the Secure Communication Division within the parent company. After studying electrical engineering, he completed his doctorate at RWTH Aachen University in the field of digital signal processing. For his dissertation, he received the renowned E+ Promotion Prize in 2004 and the Bosch's Plaque from RWTH Aachen University in 2006. From 2004 to 2007, he worked as technology manager at Nokia. In 2007, he founded SecuSmart, based in Düsseldorf, together with Dr. Hans Christoph Quelle. There, he pursued the goal of making previously unprotected mobile communication both secure and easy to use. Dr. Erdmann has 20 years plus of experience in software, security, information management, mobility, and communications at BlackBerry, Nokia, and SecuSmart. With a deep heritage in secure communications, BlackBerry delivers operational resiliency with a comprehensive, highly secure, and extensively certified portfolio for mobile fortification, mission-critical communications, and critical events management. With technical know-how and entrepreneurial spirit, he made SecuSmart a leading specialist for secure mobile communications, whose products are used today by governments and companies all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand once again as we welcome Dr. Erdmann. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we are eager to hear your thoughts. The stage is all yours, Dr. Erdmann.
Okay. Thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for putting up this picture with a much younger version of myself. So, as already announced today, we're going to talk about securing mission-critical communications. And I will use the next 30 hours, and I will use the first part of it to essentially scare the hell out of you, to make sure you all understand what the threat landscape is, what the vulnerabilities are, what's out there, and then we'll structure this a little bit, and then also come to the conclusions part, to a solutions part, right? So let me see if this clicker works. It does. Seems a bit delayed. Is it advancing? No, it's not. This clicker is not really working, guys. Maybe someone has hacked this clicker here. That's the first. Okay. At least it worked for once. So let's start with the scare you part. Just put yourself in that situation and imagine if I had only your phone number. So anybody in this room, if you give me your phone number and we don't know each other, I'm immediately able to listen into all your calls, to read all your messages. Further on, to access your metadata. Metadata, and we'll come to that in a second, means I know all the time when you're making a call, who you're calling with, how long this call is. Plus, I'll have your geolocation so I can track you. And this is only by just knowing your phone number. I'm giving you a real-world application of this. So at the moment we have war in Europe, right? And if some may remember, in the beginning of the Russian invasion to Ukraine, the Russians lost a pretty high amount of generals within the first weeks of the invasion, which everybody who's somehow familiar with tactics of war, that's super unusual, that you lose so many high-ranked generals, officers of your force. So what was happening? So now most in the room here are police force, and maybe not so much with a defense background, but when you go and deploy troops to foreign soil, to an enemy's country, anybody an idea of what's the first thing you do? You take the enemy's comms down. So that's the first thing you always do. You always make sure your enemy loses its capability to communicate and to organize themselves, right? The Russians didn't do that. Instead, because they had no proper own tactical communication system at hand, they used the Ukrainian public phone network and their own smartphones to make calls. Now what this means in essence is, within the Ukrainian mobile network, they were waving with a big flag and saying, "Hello, here, I'm your invader." And the Ukrainians didn't even have to bother of intercepting their communication. All that they did is they kind of exploited the metadata. They analyzed it and they saw, okay, every morning at, say, 7 p.m., there's a call emanating from one source, from one number, and then it's trickling down the tree. And that was exactly, in minutes, they had the chain of command, including the geolocation. So, long story short, they immediately knew where to drop a bomb. And this is how these generals got killed in the first week. So that just tells you secure comms, in particular also the metadata, the traces you leave in the network, can lead to a life-threatening assault. And now what if I tell you further? You may say, yeah, okay, here Christoph has dedicated all his life and his career to secure comms, so he knows all about the trickery and how to do this stuff. But the funny, not so funny part is you all and everybody can have this service as per subscription. So if you're willing to spend $10 a month, you just get this. You don't even need to go to the dark web. You can just go, there's websites out there offering this service per subscription. Okay, so per subscription, that means I have an app on the phone that tells me when my target makes a phone call, I can listen into that call, I can do all this stuff, okay? That's just to tell you how easy it is, right? And people used to believe these capabilities are exclusive to police forces, law enforcement forces. They're actually not. They're just publicly available. So I'll tell you a little bit how this works. And therefore, we have to look a little bit of what is called SS7. SS7 is a standard. That is the standard that all communication, all telephone communication is based on, is using, right? It's called Signaling System 7. It was designed somewhere in the 1960s, 1970s. So that's almost 70-year-old protocol. So compare that to IP. IP is still in its childhood compared to this one, okay? So, and this was never designed for being anyhow secure. This was always designed for being interoperable and being scalable. Obviously, over time, the most obvious vulnerabilities got fixed. And it was, just to give you some background, it was about 10 years ago when a fellow countryman of mine demonstrated this capability to the US Senate. And these guys completely freaked out. So he was live intercepting a senator just by getting his phone number. And they completely freaked out. So they did a lot of things and a lot of initiatives to get this fixed. So these vulnerabilities got fixed. But they inspired a hack, which is very similar, which you can't fix. And I'll tell you how this goes. So imagine you have a license for a mobile carrier. Now you may think, okay, this is difficult. No, it's not. There's countries in the world where maybe for 50 grand or something, you get a mobile phone carrier's license. And if you are a state actor, right, another country, it's super easy to give to one of your agencies a mobile carrier's license. What that means is you're automatically part of the global mobile carrier system and therefore of the SS7 signaling system. That means all mobile carriers globally are trusting each other. So now what do you do with this? You all have been in the scenario where you go to a foreign country and you do roaming, right? And what happens in the case of roaming, technically under the hood, and I try to do that in layman's terms here so that everybody understands, is the roaming carrier is sending a message to your home carrier, telling the home carrier, hey, number 12345 is with me. So every call for this number you're getting, give it to me. And again, there's no security in that. They just trust each other. So this is just happening, right? So now, take this a step further and think you are a rogue carrier. So you're not a real carrier. Your only goal is to intercept people. And you may say, where's the point, right? That's an attack when I'm roaming. No, it's not. Because while you're sitting here in Malaysia, a foreign carrier can contact your home carrier, and while you're here, still telling them, hey, number 12345 is roaming with me. So and your carrier, your home carrier here, will automatically forward all calls to this roaming carrier. Now, you still want to receive your calls, right? Because this attack shouldn't be detected. So what the rogue roaming carrier is doing, it's immediately reverse forwarding these calls back to your home carrier. So eventually you get all these calls, but they get routed through the world, right? Through this rogue carrier. And this rogue carrier, then they can intercept the calls. They have all the metadata. They have your location. They have your messages. They have everything. That's how this works. And there's essentially nothing from a carrier's perspective that you can do about this. There's nothing. There is stuff you can do about it, as I'm going to tell you in a minute, But there's nothing from a communications network perspective, because the moment you introduce measures of security into this roaming agreements, you break global telecommunications. The minute you do that, global comms is broken, and no one's going to do that. So now you may say, yeah, okay, Christoph, you're telling us about standard, old-school telephony, but we're in the age of messaging applications, right? So services that offer seemingly secure communications, some with end-to-end encryption, and you see a few here. I brought up a few to the screen, and those are actually apps that I see governments using even for their classified information. But the fact of the matter is, even though some of them will tell you your call is now end-to-end encrypted, one, they're missing out on a couple of other things that I'm telling you in a second. Two is they're also selling your metadata. So that means these companies own your metadata, and it's part of their business model to sell these metadata. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Those are commercial consumer products. Plus, none of these products has ever gone through a independent security evaluation, so no one knows or has ever verified how good their encryption really is. Okay. So what we have by now is that we have some view, and hopefully you're already scared a little bit, into how insecure classical public telephony over public networks is. And that is not just old landline, that is also mobile phones. The whole thing extends into more modern messaging apps. Even those apps, while offering some end-to-end encryption, you don't own that data. You don't have control over the metadata. And I showed you in the beginning, I told you what the risk about not owning your metadata is. And then there is still this thing, and that is like what we're going to talk about in a minute. Then there's also more closed group apps, like typical productivity apps. Those have the problem, they're only good for closed groups. Plus, they need to have integration with your entire IT infrastructure. That means, one, if you are a bit more like an open organization that wants public reach out and everything, this is not going to solve your issue. Two, when your IT system is under attack, this system is under attack. So it's simply not designed for being used for mission-critical comms, which means you want to have some sort of an out-of-band solution that is circumventing this. Okay, so let's get this a little bit structured. What are these risks that I'm talking about? Risk number one, obviously, interception. Means your attacker gets immediate knowledge about what you're talking about, the contents of the conversation. This obviously is the most immediate attack. And as you saw, it's almost one of the most simple attacks today to do for someone, if you don't protect yourself. The next one is identity spoofing. So identity spoofing is equally important or is equally dangerous as interception. Because imagine the scenario, you think you have a secure line because you're using one of these consumer-grade apps that tells you your call is now end-to-end encrypted. However, for instance, when I came here to Malaysia, the weekend before, I got, no offense by the way, I got bombarded by people, employees, officers of the Royal Police Force, obviously having a Malaysian phone number, telling me, hey, Dr. Christoph, I'm your liaison officer for session number 2 of day 2. And then there were 10, since I'm in multiple sessions today, I had 10 liaison officers, and some even saying this for the same session. And I was like, how do I know? How do I know who is who? How can I trust? And I mean, they wanted to know some very personal information from me. So if I was super paranoid and think someone has designed a plot to hijack me at the airport in Malaysia, that would have been the perfect attack, right? I give them all my data, and they have just assigned Dr. Christoph, right? And I'll go in, trust this. So I don't know these people. How can I trust? Bottom line is, it's good to know your line is secure. It's equally important to know on a cryptographically verified basis whom you're talking to. And then number 3 is intelligence services and also commercial organizations make a business out of gathering your communication records, which is actually the gold of today's interception, is getting these records, because those tell you most of the time a lot more about how an organization is working than just intercepting the communication as such, okay? So there's the 3 things you need to do. The one we talked about is end-to-end encryption. And again, end-to-end encryption does not equal end-to-end encryption. So ideally, this end-to-end encryption that you're using to secure the line is an encryption that has been verified. So it's not enough to just trust, oh yeah, this is offered by company A or company B and it's used by millions of people. That doesn't mean anything, right? It has to be evaluated. Number 2, you need to have some sort, ideally certificate-based authentication, to control the identities within a communication system so you know whom is talking to whom. If you don't do these first 2 things, end-to-end encryption and identity protection, you can equally as well write a postcard, right? Writing a postcard is the same thing. Everybody can read it. The postman can read it. The guy who's emptying the post box can read it. And everybody can kind of manipulate the contents. Or you don't even know if the one who's sending you that postcard is the one you believe it is it, right? Because there is, believe it or not, for ID spoofing, there's folks like doing voice imitation that has been used quite a few times to fool people telling secrets over a phone line that is supposedly secure. And number 3, obviously, when you want to control the metadata, then you need to take control of the system. You need to own your system. You need to, we call it, you need to go dark with your own data and make sure this data doesn't appear in public networks anymore. Let's have a look at this diagram here. I'll try to keep it very simplistic. Actually, it shows you, on first glance, it shows you just where are the attack vectors to intercept communication, but it has a bit more to it. So obviously what you see, your mobile phone is talking to a cell tower. So that's the classical thing everybody is believing interception works. It's like, okay, you're snooping a call on the wireless connection between the cell towers. That might have been done 20 years ago with technologies like IMSI catchers, IMSI catchers and stuff like this. Super expensive, very inefficient. So what you see today is actually that the communication gets intercepted centrally within the network. And the attack that I was describing in the beginning, this service that we can book, that everybody who's willing to pay $10 a month can book, is working in the network. And that's much more convenient, right? Because it scales, it scales indefinitely, basically. It's cheap, and it can be targeted. And by the way, the next iteration or the next escalation of that attack is what we see with Salt Typhoon, right? Salt Typhoon also, a group of hackers, of state-sponsored hackers, was able to compromise the systems within the network, within the transmission network, okay? And when doing so, they could intercept and listen into all the calls. Basically, everything I was describing in the beginning is what they now have at hand, at data. So now you might still ask yourself, yeah, okay, but within all these zillions of bits and bytes and data that's flowing through the network, how can you then run a targeted attack, let's say on a VIP target, like for instance, the Prime Minister of Malaysia? How can you do that? Well, because you try to keep his phone number somewhat under control. Fact of the matter is, that's the metadata exploitation. Someone just needs to intercept. Someone who has that access can just exploit the metadata, and by analyzing this metadata and taking like a public org chart of organizations, which you can get from the internet, they immediately make the match. And in times of big data analysis, this is no secret science. And then, and we should talk about this for completeness here too, there's another vector of attack here, which also has pretty much a degree of sophistication on it, and that requires a lot more to do. That is an attack to the operating system of the phone. So that is kind of source, and you do interception directly at the source. Yeah, okay, it works. But let me be clear, and I will show this on the next slide. With what we discussed so far, these three risks, those are 90% of the attacks that are out there, right? We're now getting into a little bit more specified attacks and special attacks. They're much more costly. So, for instance, take to compromise a device. For one, compromising a device is only efficient if you do that globally, because it's almost indefinitely hard to compromise if you have one target that you want to intercept. Take again the Prime Minister of Malaysia. It could also be like the German Chancellor, and believe me, I have some experience with that person, personally. So to compromise his or her phone, that takes a lot of effort, and that takes a lot of intelligence work, getting hold of the phone and everything, so that's hard to do. So I'm just saying that means you have to spread this malware globally just to make sure, just like a big fish net, that the person you actually want to intercept is among those. And this goes like, you all have heard about this probably, this goes like hacks like the Pegasus hack from that Israeli company. And you can say this hack, like one vulnerability, one zero-day exploit in a mobile phone via software, exploit via Pegasus software, the cost is about $1 million per hack, per vulnerability. So if you're willing to put that million on the table, you're in the game to do this. Much more costly than all this other stuff that I was explaining to you is a few $1,000s to do, by the way. And even if you go down the road of being a mobile phone carrier, that's maybe $100K. So it's a lot cheaper attack. The next two attacks are just here for completeness because they're not so much technical attacks. They're more like have something to do with an organization and how you establish policies within your organization. Because obviously you can have the most sophisticated and secure technical systems to close all these loopholes and prevent all these vulnerabilities from being, or protect yourself from all these vulnerabilities to get exploited. But still, you might have like a rogue user, an insider, right, who is using your system against you. That is something you have to do proper role separation within your organization. The same goes, at least in this respect here, for data leakage. So, coming to this chart, and this is, I was a little bit hesitating whether I want to put this on, but because this seems quite technical and quite confusing. So the story of this is like this. If you take that red bar here, that is the axis, let's say, of the attack, of the sophistication of the attack. And you can also put like a $, what I just did. While the attack on the left side is from a few hundred to a few $1,000. The middle is about $100,000. And here we are in the range of a couple of $1 million for the attack. And that's why I kept saying almost 90% of all the attacks out there, and what I was specifically, wrong button. What I was specifically talking in the beginning, this is here on the left side. And a proper solution for encrypted comms, for classified, like the one I'm obviously showing you in a minute, will protect you on that side. The beauty is that just means you have to employ technology. You can deploy technology, and that will get you protected from 80 to 90% of the attacks that are out there in the wild, okay? Particularly from the ones I mentioned in the beginning. This $10 service, and also state act from Salt Typhoon, all of this you deal with here. And I try to align this also with mobile devices. So if you have a BOYD deployment of devices, bring your own device, so not devices you don't own as a corporate, this is effective even down to BOYD. So in a wild, unmanaged zoo of devices. In the moment, you want to protect yourself against these very sophisticated on-device attacks. Obviously, you need to do something with the device. You need to harden the device. You need to take the device under control. So that no longer works for an open community. That needs a closed community that gets under management. So this is where mobile device management and mobile threat detection comes to the game. And to be honest, this is where most organizations and most government organizations stop, right? So I have only very, very, very few customers that are going up to the point of saying, we give our users a dedicated device, and that dedicated device is only for processing classified information and nothing else. And you know what the problem is with these types of devices and these solutions? Users are not using them. They end up in the drawer. And so you can roll out the most secure and most sophisticated solution to the users. If they're not being used, actually, they're worthless and they're insecure. Then the most insecure solution. And this is why I always keep saying security is almost like a screw, right? After fix comes fixer, and then comes loose, right? And that's the same with security. So keep that in mind, whatever you do. So briefly, obviously there's a solution to this. There's a solution from the company that I founded and that I'm still responsible for, which is BlackBerry SecuSuite. This gives you exactly the full sovereign secure communication, so you can take the entire backend on-prem. It's used in the meantime by 20 countries, 20 governments around the globe, including the government of Malaysia, who is using this solution and is at the moment in the process of rolling it out to government employees and agencies, and some of them obviously sitting in this room. And I have seen during the days of the fair here already many people showing me their phone, showing the SecuSuite on and saying, hey, this is good stuff. And I can only encourage users, go use this stuff. Go use it, because if you don't use it, it's not helping you, it's not protecting you. So the most important thing is you just have to use it. It's obviously certified, and we do have a long track record, actually, of more than 10 years maintaining certifications with NATO, with NSA, with the Canadian security agencies, the German BSI, which is the German NSA. And it's part of BlackBerry's entire secure communications platform, which means if you, on the diagram that I was showing you before, if you have an interest to go further and get more sophisticated by adding MDM and MTD, so mobile device management, mobile threat detection, we can help you there as well. So that brings me to the end, and wrapping up quickly and giving you a bit of my recommendation of if you want to tackle that problem, don't start from that right end of that diagram, right? Start at the left side. Do apply the 80-20. You don't need to win a Formula One race in the first place, right? You first want to have a normal car that gets you from A to B and does that safely and reliably. So you have to focus on specific use cases, and if you define that use, because if you're going wild, your users will always find ways to get around, right? So you start with the basics. You deliver a capability that you can quickly roll out and have a flexible architecture. And always remember, it has to be easy to use. Ease of use is the key element in getting it into the user's hands and getting it used. Because if it's not used, it's totally insecure. And with that, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. I hope this was informative for you. I hope this was somewhat entertaining for you. And I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Okay. For the Q&A sessions, I think we can allow just one more question from the floor, if there is any question. Okay, so it seems there's no question.
Seems I have shocked you enough to make you speechless. Mission accomplished.
Yes, if there is no question, that means the information is clear and well presented by Dr. Christoph. So as we are going to wrap up this session, I would like to take this opportunity to extend our deepest gratitude and sincere appreciation to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Christoph Erdmann. Please give him a round of applause. As a gesture of our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation, we are honored to invite the Honorable Senior Assistant Commissioner of Police, Zaldino bin Zaludin, from Commercial Crime Investigation Department to the stage to present a token of appreciation to our Dr. Christoph Erdmann. Dr. Erdmann, please remain on the stage. Thank you, Dr. Christoph Erdmann. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Erdmann. We have now come to the end of our ceremony, and thank you all for your presence. Good day and God bless. Thank you.